One of the most persistent and damaging myths in cases involving parental alienation is the belief that children choose it. This belief appears in courtrooms, clinical reports, and public discourse, often phrased as respect for the child's wishes or deference to the child's autonomy. From a developmental, psychological, and legal standpoint, this belief is simply incorrect. Children do not choose alienation. They adapt to it. To understand why, we must begin with how choice actually works in childhood. Choice presumes autonomy, freedom from coercion, and the ability to evaluate options without fear of relational loss. Those conditions do not exist for children in dependent attachment relationships. A child's survival, emotionally and psychologically, depends on maintaining access to caregivers. When access is threatened, choice collapses into adaptation. Attachment systems are not democratic. They are hierarchical. Children orient toward the caregiver who controls proximity, emotional availability, and safety. When one parent controls the child's environment, information, or emotional climate, the child's attachment system reorganizes around that parent regardless of fairness, accuracy, or past experience. This is not preference. It is dependency. Children are biologically wired to preserve attachment at all costs. When a child perceives that expressing affection for one parent threatens the stability of another relationship, the child suppresses that affection. This is not conscious strategy. It is a nervous system response to relational threat. This is why children often appear confident, certain, or even hostile in alienation cases. Certainty is stabilizing. Ambivalence is dangerous when attachment is at risk. The child's internal system resolves conflict by eliminating one attachment rather than risking both. Developmentally, children lack the capacity to evaluate adult motives, contextualize behavior across time, or resist subtle pressure from authority figures. Even adolescents, who are often treated as autonomous decision-makers, remain deeply dependent on caregivers for emotional regulation and security. The idea that a child can freely reject a parent in an environment shaped by fear, loyalty pressure, or emotional reward is inconsistent with everything we know about development. Fear does not have to be explicit to be effective. Children are exquisitely sensitive to emotional shifts. A sigh, a withdrawn tone, a look of sadness, or a subtle change in availability communicates risk. Over time, the child learns which emotions are safe to express and which are not. This learning happens below conscious awareness. This is why alienation often begins without overt hostility. No one has to say, "You can't love your other parent." The child figures it out. The concept of loyalty conflict is central here. Loyalty conflict occurs when a child believes that maintaining a relationship with one parent threatens their relationship with the other. This conflict creates chronic stress. Children resolve it not by confronting the parent with power, but by altering themselves. They minimize, they comply, they align. This alignment is reinforced through emotional conditioning. When the child echoes negative views or resists contact, tension decreases. When the child expresses longing or affection, tension increases. Over time, the child learns what behavior restores equilibrium. This is conditioning, not choice. Another key factor is role reversal. In alienation dynamics, children are often drawn into adult emotional roles. They are asked to comfort, reassure, or protect a parent. They may hear about legal stress, betrayal, or fear. Once a child becomes emotionally responsible for a parent, independence becomes dangerous. Choosing the other parent feels like abandonment. This is parentification, and it removes the possibility of free choice. Children cannot choose against someone they feel responsible for. Cognitive development also plays a role. Children construct meaning through repetition and authority. When narratives are repeated by a trusted caregiver, they become internalized. This is especially true when the narratives explain emotional tension the child already feels. Over time, the child's beliefs shift to match the emotional reality they must navigate. This is why children in alienation cases often use adult language and abstract moral reasoning. The language sounds autonomous, but it is borrowed. It reflects alignment with the attachment system that controls safety. Memory distortion further undermines the idea of choice. Children's memories are reconstructive. When past events are repeatedly reframed, doubted, or reinterpreted, the child's recollection changes. This is not deception. It is how memory works under pressure. At no point in this process does the child step back and weigh options freely. The child is responding to relational constraints. Legal systems often compound this error by treating the child's stated wishes as independent evidence. But preferences formed under coercive conditions are not expressions of autonomy. They are evidence of constraint. Treating them otherwise is a failure of protection. Importantly, children rarely articulate fear directly. They express it through compliance, certainty, and rejection. A child who says, "I don't want to see my parent," may be saying, "I cannot risk losing the parent I depend on." This is why interventions that focus on persuading the child often fail. You cannot reason a child out of a survival adaptation. The system must change. When courts, clinicians, or educators assume children choose alienation, they misassign responsibility. The burden shifts from the adult creating pressure to the child responding to it. This is not only inaccurate, it is harmful. Understanding that children do not choose alienation forces a different set of questions. Who controls access? Who controls emotional safety? Who benefits from alignment? And what would happen to the child if they expressed something different? Those questions lead us away from preference and toward power. Once we recognize that alienation is adaptation, not choice, the ethical and legal implications become unavoidable. Children cannot consent to the loss of a parent. They cannot waive attachment needs. And they cannot be held responsible for resolving adult conflict. Alienation persists because systems mistake adaptation for autonomy. Correcting that mistake is not about denying children a voice. It is about understanding what that voice is shaped by. Children speak from within the relationships they must survive. And until those relationships are made safe, their words cannot be treated as free choice.